We're going to get started here now. I am very pleased to have a couple of colleagues joining me today from a neighboring program in the Department of Psychiatry at Mass General. And typically I really mean neighboring because we're just a floor off from one another. Although these days, as we're all joining from our living rooms and everywhere else, we're spread about, social distancing. So I imagine some others are going to begin to filter in. But let me introduce my guests here. We have Rana Chudnofsky and Laura Malloy, who are joining us from the Benson-Henry Institute at Mass General Hospital. And I'll let them in just a moment tell you a little bit more about Benson-Henry. And I'm gonna have them talk a little bit about their work for a few minutes, but then we're gonna actually get right down to some work ourselves together as a group, as they are going to lead us through a couple of relaxation techniques. And we may even be able to squeeze in some full body breathing exercises, upper neck back work, or perhaps one thing I was looking forward to, I have to say, was a little eye yoga to relieve eye strain that so many of us are experiencing these days with all of the time that we're spending on screens like this. And I know yoga practice is a big part of my day and things that help keep me calm and regulated, but I have not done eye yoga, so this will be good. So let me just put this in context a little bit. As we have talked about as a community here, and in the beginning we had, I think, thousands of people joining us, and a lot of people listen to this via recordings afterwards. We've been talking a lot about how this is a time of chronic stress for so many people, not just the kids that we support, but the parents and teachers, the other adults with them as well. And one of the things we know from working with kids with behavioral challenges is that dysregulation is contagious. Nothing like a dysregulated kid to get adults around them dysregulated as well. Now, the nice thing is that regulation is contagious as well. So if we can stay regulated, even in the face of dysregulation from kids, co-regulation can happen where we can sort of bring a kid back down to baseline. So fancy language aside, this is all about how can we, parents, teachers, clinicians, providers, during a very stressful time, stay calm ourselves, because otherwise we're not going to be much use to the kids we serve as well. So with that as a little bit of background and context, I will turn things over to my guests and let them introduce their work a little bit. And like I said, we'll get to do a little practice, and then we'll spend some time taking some Q&A from folks as well. All right, Rana and Laura, take it away.
Hello, everybody, and thanks so much again for having us, Stuart and Think Kids. I think there's so much synergy between the collaborative problem solving and the work that we do at the Benson-Henry. So it'll be really fun to kind of get those connections together. Let me give you guys just a little bit of a background of who we are, who's the Benson-Henry Institute. We've actually evolved from over 45 years of pioneering work in the field of behavioral medicine. And as a young cardiologist, Dr. Benson studied at the Thorndike Laboratory at Harvard Medical School. That's where the term was coined, the relaxation response. Actually, one interesting little tidbit is years before, Walter Buchanan coined the term the fight or flight response, actually also in the Thorndike Laboratory. So the relaxation response is really the foundation of a lot of our work and a lot of the work that we do with kids. It's basically a repetition that stops the train of everyday thought. And then when other thoughts intrude, what we call that monkey mind, we go back to that repetition. And then as Laura's going to go over a bunch of different techniques, we found that the relaxation response, not only a repetition with a meditation or part of a prayer or mantra-based, it's also been expanded, the relaxation response. We've done a lot of research on yoga, Tai Chi, Qigong, and so on. Also just want to mention on the side note that 60 to 90% of primary care visits are stress related. So that's a huge percentage. But when we look at mind-body medicine, we see it in tiers. We see when we have 4 things in balance: good nutrition, good exercise, good sleep, and as Stuart was mentioning, some relaxation techniques like yoga. Oftentimes those physical symptoms of stress, us as adults and parents, and for our kids, tend to be much more reduced. A little bit of a background of where we came about with the work with the Resilient Youth Program is back in 1989, Marilyn Wiltshire, who was the senior vice president of the Benson-Henry Institute, there was a lash of suicides on college campuses, and she said, why are we waiting till these adults have serious physical symptoms of stress? Why don't we start at a much younger age? And now, unfortunately, in 2020, as you all know, in a community not far from us, we're seeing suicides as young as 10. So we see a huge need for our work right now. We're seeing, when I started 18 years ago with Laura, we were doing a lot of work for college and middle school. And now, unfortunately, the physical symptoms of stress are becoming younger and younger. Laura and I did a training together at a children's center for kids as young as 3 and 4. Before COVID, I did a training at a middle school, and more than half of the kids at a middle school level told me that they were having a hard time sleeping at the onset or duration of sleep. So what we teach, similar to in Think Kids believes in a toolkit approach, teaching a lot of different techniques. We also teach a lot of different techniques, and we work with the student to find the technique that really works the best for them. I just want to add one more thing, is that many students have maladaptive behaviors like cutting or what we see on a daily basis. And what we know what's really important is that they haven't learned adaptive behaviors. And so by giving them a toolkit approach and reaching them where they're at can be really helpful. And we also believe that kids of all different ages, all different backgrounds, all different types of needs can elicit the relaxation response. I worked with a little one on the spectrum whose mom wasn't sure that he would be able to elicit the relaxation response. And by asking the student, and just like we're doing here in Think Kids, by being mindful and being present and listening to the child, he told me that what he loved was roller coaster rides. And so what we did was we created a meditation around roller coaster rides. And one of the things we found is that when he was going down on the roller coaster rides, his hands were up and his heart rate was down. So reaching the student where they're at is really a big philosophy for us. So thanks for having us.
Thanks, Rana. And I just want to add that really, like a toolkit, these are skills that are life skills. And really, we like to think of it as prevention, because I think all of us, as Stuart said, we're dealing with chronic stress right now, and it's contagious. And so if we can think about how can we set ourselves up for success? How can we make some easy, simple routines, as Stuart said, doing his yoga practice every day, you know, as a way to bring our stress level down back to baseline. And we try to encourage people, students, adults alike, as best they can, to do something every day, even if it's just for a minute to start, you know, focusing on their breath or a positive visualization. And that will help build our resiliency and buffer us towards stress. And it not only helps us in the moment, but it helps us to have this carryover effect, so that we can better deal with the things that come our way during the day. And so we think of it as, how can we make this part of our daily routine and carve out time to do it? And then that will help us deal with the stressors that come our way. And I love how Rana highlighted it's, you know, doing the relaxation techniques, but also self-care in general. So how can we be sure that we get a good night's sleep? You know, what are we eating? You know, are we nourishing our bodies and our minds with the food that we're taking in? Are we trying to find some social connection in this time of social isolation? And maybe do some pro-social behaviors like reaching out towards the people who might be even more isolated, or thanking those essential workers by putting posters in the windows. And be sure to move our body every day in some way. And thank goodness the weather is nicer now, so we can get outside and get some sunlight, fresh air, and that's going to help with better sleep too. So happy to talk about all these different strategies with all of you.
I just also want to just piggyback on something that Laura said, the practice. And I think oftentimes for children who may have behavioral challenges, I think that the practice is sometimes even more important than just continuing learning a different strategy. I think sometimes when a student feels overloaded or overwhelmed, just throwing another technique in that moment can be really stressful. So that daily practice of doing a technique that they chose that really works for them can be so helpful for regulation.
Well, thank you both. That's great background, and I think explains to people exactly why we wanted to have you all here during this time and how the work connects with our work. Would you like to lead us through a few things, and then perhaps at the end we'll have some time then for some just general discussion. I know I have some questions, and I'm hoping that folks on board here will as well. As our staff had indicated earlier, please just use the Q&A to type in questions for us here of any kind that we'll be able to take towards the end of our time, which goes up till 2:45 today. Do you want to lead us through some things, and hopefully that eye yoga as well?
Sure, I'll be happy to start with so what we call it's a progressive muscle relaxation. And so sometimes we're not even aware of the stress and tension that we're holding in our body. So by exaggerating that tension, then releasing it consciously and breathing into it, we might notice a more relaxed effect. And so as Rana said, really what we need to do is just bring our attention to our body. That'll be our focus and our breath. We're always going to have thoughts that enter the mind. And when those thoughts do come up, just say to yourself, oh, well, let the thought go and come back to the sensation of your body and your breath. So you can do this sitting down in the chair that you're in, or if you're so inclined, you can lie down in a comfortable position. But take a few moments to settle in. If you are sitting down, it might be nice to have a straight spine and have your feet resting on the floor. And it's just going to take a few minutes. If you're wanting to take glasses off or shoes, feel free. Allow yourself to get comfortable. So we're going to start with the feet and work our way up towards the head. If anything bothers you or feels uncomfortable, feel free to skip it. You know what's best for your body. So to start, bring your attention to your feet and begin to curl your toes under as if you're picking up pencils with your toes. Take a deep breath in and out. Feel that tension in your feet. And then as you exhale, consciously relax your feet and toes. And take a few breaths in and out. You can say to yourself, my feet are relaxed. And then we're going to create some tension in the legs. So you can imagine that you're holding a beach ball between your knees. And imagine gently squeezing that beach ball as you tighten the lower legs, the upper legs. Breathing into that tension in your legs. Another breath in. And as you exhale, completely relax your legs. Take some easy breaths in and out. You can say to yourself, my legs and feet are completely relaxed. And we'll create some movement in the hands and arms. So as you're able, make a couple of gentle fists and then draw your fists up towards your shoulders like you're making muscle. Take a deep breath in and out. Breathe into that tension. And as you exhale, completely relax your arms and hands. You can say to yourself, my arms and hands are relaxed. And now we'll create some tension in the shoulders and the face. As you're able, draw your shoulders up towards your ears And then scrunch your face up like you're making a prune face. Take a deep breath in and out. And as you exhale, completely relax your face and shoulders. You could say to yourself, my shoulders and face are completely relaxed. And now we're going to put it all together. You're going to scrunch up your toes, engage the muscles of your thighs, curl your fists, draw them up to the shoulders, make that prune face if you can, deep breath in and out. And as you exhale, completely relax your entire body, letting go. If you like, you can close your eyes or lower your gaze towards your lap. And just notice the rhythm of your breath. Notice sensation in your body. And just see if you feel a little more relaxed. No need to judge your experience. Just noticing how you feel. And then we'll do a little eye yoga that Stuart was looking forward to. So we are on screens so much, especially in this virtual world these days. If you're wearing glasses, you might like to take them off for this. If you have contacts in, you might just want to practice carefully or see if this works for you. So you're going to try to move the eyes without moving your head. And you're going to blink as much as you need throughout this. So start by bringing your gaze forward. And now shift your gaze all the way to the right, through center to the left, back to the right, to the left, to the right, to the left, and back to center, and blink your eyes rapidly to lubricate the eyes. Good, then open the eyes. We're gonna go up and down. So bring the gaze up to the ceiling, down to the floor, looking up, looking down, looking up, looking down, back to center, and blink those eyes rapidly. Good, then release the blinking. We're gonna go on the diagonal. So upper hand to the right, diagonal lower left, upper right, lower left, upper right, lower left, back to center and blink. Good, now release the blinking, opposite direction, upper left, lower right, upper left, lower right, upper left, lower right, back to center and blink. And now close your eyes. And you can either pause here with the eyes closed, or if you like, you can rub your hands briskly to create some heat between your palms. It might take a little while to get that going. And then if you do feel heat between the palms, just gently cup your palms over your closed eyes and allow your eyes to rest in the warmth and darkness of your hand. Giving your eyes a much needed break from all the information that they take in during the day. And then releasing your hands down if they were up. And taking all the time you need to gently open your eyes, noticing how your body and your eyes feel. You do that anytime you need a little break from your screen. You took glasses off, you can put them on. Good, and I'll turn it over to Rana to see if she'd like to lead in a relaxation.
Oh, Sure. One of the things I love about the way you were just leading that, Laura, is by starting at the toes. So I think that kids and adults alike, we can be a lot of times in our heads. So, you know, to start the progressive muscle relaxation, the furthest place away from the thinking mind can be so helpful for sure. So I think I'll talk about a couple different breathing techniques. And again, I think it's all about asking the student, you know, what they like to do and where they're at. So if you were working with someone who had anorexia or bulimia, you might not want to start off with this breathing technique. But for some students, it can be very, very helpful. So allow your body to get as comfortable as you can, again, in your chair with your feet flat on the floor. And you're looking for a posture that's upright but not rigid. And we're going to do a 4-7-8 breathing method that can be really helpful for anxiety and also helpful also for insomnia. If the numbering is off for you or for the child that you're working with, if it's too long to hold the breath, just say no big deal and change the numbering system to make it work for you. But we're going to start by taking an inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold your breath if you can for 7 seconds. And now exhaling for 8 seconds. And one more time, inhaling, 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold the breath for 7 seconds. And now exhaling for 8 seconds. And then you can continue doing that until you feel calm. But that's a nice, what we call a mini relaxation exercise. The relaxation response is based on a 20-minute practice on a daily basis. But if you're doing it on a daily basis, these minis can be really very, very helpful during the day. And there's many different times that we have some wasted time, perhaps between Zoom calls with kids or right before you have an important appointment. It's great to be able to just do a mini to bring your body back to a relaxed state. I also want to mention a couple things to help you to get back in your body. Some of the kids that I've worked with who have had behavioral challenges, sometimes in moments of nervousness, they're not exactly feeling in their physical body, and I think it can be really helpful. It's hard to do here, so I'm going to explain this technique. So what you would do is you would bring your heels together, and you would just tap your toes as quickly as you can for 60 seconds. And what the purpose of that is to just focus on the bottom half of your body and get you out of your thinking mind. Another thing you can do with your child is have them lay on their back and move their hands and feet as quick as they can for about 60 seconds, just to let go of nervous energy. The next thing you can do is you can stand up in a horse riding stance. So you would bend your knees to protect your lower back, 2 fingers below your navel, just doing some tapping for about 60 seconds. And what that will also do is that will help somebody just to get back into the physical body, and also they'll feel lightness and help you to get out of your thinking mind. If you find that these techniques are really, really challenging to do with your children, you can also just have a pad of paper next to them and have them write for about 60 seconds before they do any of the practices. And that way you're just helping people to learn a little bit easier to have a quiet mind. And if their mind starts thinking again, no big deal, open up your eyes and then jot something on the paper. The last thing I would mention is really listening to your child and what excites them and what interests them. So even though, so when I started, I loved the beach and I did a lot of beach imagery, and then I realized that many students don't like the beach. The sand can actually cause anxiety. The beach isn't for everybody. So depending on what your child is excited about, you can work with them to write their own way to elicit the relaxation response, and they can listen to that on a daily basis.
All right. Well, thank you both very much. I know I decided to turn off my video so I wouldn't be self-conscious as I did those, but I also decided to move location so I could stretch out, and I got to tell you, I appreciate that. So thank you very much. And I appreciate you guys connecting this to the work that we do, because I think that one of the challenges with lots of, say, techniques, or as you described before, tools in the toolbox that might be wonderful and proven, is how do you get kids to try them in the first place? And I think you're both familiar enough with our work to know that one of the things that we work hard to do is make sure that people don't try to impose things upon kids, which rarely goes well, period, but certainly doesn't go well with kids with behavioral challenges for a variety of reasons. So you can have something that's extraordinarily helpful, but if you try to impose it upon kids, in actuality, it often turns them off from it in the first place. So I liked hearing you talk a little bit about being thoughtful about how to introduce things to kids. I'm going to actually open this up now and see whether folks in the audience have some questions and want some particular things for us to discuss. We have one question already, which says, is wondering if you can touch a little bit on the types of kids that this works best for, and how it, if so, paraphrasing here, how it might help to improve their skills over the long term. So 2 questions. Let's take the first one first. The types of kids that this works best for. Do you have some thoughts? Are there data that we can reference here that would be helpful for our participant here?
I personally think it works well for all children, and I think it's going to be an exploration because all children are different, and that's what's so lovely about the ways to elicit the relaxation response. We like to think of it as like a smorgasbord or a buffet, and you'll try a variety of things, and like Stuart said, not imposing, just an invitation. And I think a lot of invitational language is helpful here, so giving a lot of choices. I also teach yoga and yoga to children. And so, things like if you want, words like that, if it's comfortable for you, you could move your head in a circle or make a smaller circle. So giving them some say in what it is that they're doing. I also think it's lovely. I used to do home visits with parents and their children, and, giving the family something to do together. So making it fun, like, oh, let's make some yoga picture cards of animals, and let's do a lion's breath together. We'll put our claws out and take a deep breath in and stick our tongue out with a big exhale. So really having some fun with it is important. Meeting the child's developmental level is important. Obviously, you wouldn't be doing that with a teenager, or maybe you would, right? And I think as adults, we can be great role models, and maybe it's through attraction that we can help the students and the children to draw an interest in these techniques. So I can't really say that there's one technique that works best or one child that works best. I think patience is important, choices are important, and really for the adults to cultivate their own practice, because then maybe the children will see, oh gosh, this is really helping you. What are you doing, Mom? Or, Dad, when you're doing that breathing, you seem so calm. Could you show me how to do that? So just some ideas there.
I've got a couple ideas to piggyback with Laura. I think sometimes, and I'm not a behavioral expert at all with children with behavioral challenges, but in my experience, I noticed if I say you're going to learn a relaxation technique, that starts to put pressure on people because then the kid feels like, well, I'm not relaxed. And so 2 things could happen. One is they don't feel relaxed from what I just did, or the second issue would be then they lose trust in me. So I think, as Laura was saying, the words, like using words like invite, or I'm just inviting you to practice this technique and for you to see what you think of it. And you might like some of these, as Laura's saying, there's a big toolkit, and some of these you don't like, and that's totally okay. But I think setting somebody up like this is going to relax you, it's a lot of pressure. As well. And I agree with Laura about parents, like this is a real opportunity, like we're hoping to help kids be able to regulate more. But if we're not regulated myself as an adult, how can I have my child be regulated? And so, what is that? the Crosby, Stills and Nash song, "Teach Your Children Well." There's some song where the children, you know, eventually teach us. And, you know, it's a real opportunity during COVID to, you know, have your own personal practice and say, you know, mom needs to take a walk outside right now. She needs a break. And that's okay for them to, I think, see you taking a break, or you meditating, or you practicing yoga as well. The technique that Laura just showed us, the progressive muscle relaxation technique from Edmund Jacobson's work, I think it was in the 1960s, Laura, or 1920s. But that technique, I think, is really helpful for kids who have ADHD, because it's squeezing. So sometimes I think the body scan is a little too light, like focus on your toes, focus on your knees, and the squeezing actually can help you to get back into the physical body.
Thank you. You know, that I want to get to the second part of that question as well, but where you're right now, Rana, I think is a good chance to take on another question that came in about kids with sensory concerns, that they may be hyper aware of sensations, sounds, tactile sensitivity, etc. So you just mentioned kids with ADHD who, you know, may have a hard time focusing on some, you know, technique you're trying to teach. What about kids with sensory issues? And of course, they are overrepresented in the kids with whom we work, because many kids with sensory sensitivities have a hard time regulating themselves, and as a result, tend to engage in more challenging behavior that's often misunderstood. So I wonder what your thoughts are about using these things with kids with sensory concerns.
Yeah, I think this can definitely be helpful. I'm thinking of some of the classrooms that I worked in previously, and the teachers would give the students some choices, whether they wanted to use some lotion on their hands, and, you know, it wasn't imposed, it was just giving themselves a calming hand massage. And so we know if they can do something that's relaxing, that's going to calm their nervous system. And again, if they have the choice, or if they wanted to smell some relaxing fragrances or not, you know, but we know lavender and aromatherapy can have a calming effect. Similarly, listening to music, it has to be preferred by the student, by the child, if they like that music. And so again, I think it comes back to choice, but I think the nervous system is so tied into sensory integration. And so if we can help these students and these children to calm their nervous systems, it's going to be helpful for them in the long run. And figuring out again with the individual child what works for them and what they enjoy and find calming.
Thank you. So you know, the previous question was a two-parter. I think the second one is interesting and challenging question, which is about the long-term effects of learning some of these skills. And I wonder if you can touch upon, in my mind, one of the things I think about is, okay, you can teach people relaxation techniques and they can develop skill at applying those techniques themselves. And, you know, it's always incredibly gratifying when you see somebody, an adult or a child, begin to use things independently that you've taught them and find them helpful. But I think there's an additional piece here, which is in your experience and perhaps from the data as well, if people practice these things regularly, do we see improvements in self and emotion regulation? So not just that they, yes, are able to use them and yes, they're effective, but if they're practicing them regularly, do we see general improvements in ability to regulate states of arousal, you know, emotions, et cetera? I'd be curious your thoughts about that.
Yeah, so the literature does show, and I can't speak specifically for children, but for adults, it definitely changes the brain structure when people have a daily relaxation practice. And so as Rana suggested, ideally we're shooting for 20 minutes a day, but if you can't get to that, if you can start with 5 minutes or less and build up to 10 minutes, fantastic. But through MRIs, it's been shown that it changes the brain structures, and especially the structures that have to do with emotional processing and regulation and taking in attention and sensory. And so when we were doing research, or I think it was prior to the research that Rana and I contributed to in the schools, but teachers reported that the students were cooperating better after learning these techniques and doing them. And so it might have been a subjective impression from the teachers, but maybe the teachers were feeling more relaxed too. But they definitely felt like the children's behavior had shifted in that way. And we know through fMRIs that it's changing the structure of the brain. So absolutely.
Yeah. It reminds me of a group that I came across through our work in the New York City schools called Bent on Learning. And they were satisfying the physical education requirements in some of the New York City schools where they really didn't have great facilities to begin with either. They were satisfying them by clearing the classroom temporarily, pushing the desks aside, putting yoga mats down, and doing yoga. And I do remember the teachers noting that their classrooms were significantly easier to manage as a result. And I know that we tend to have a lot of folks who join these calls who are fans of a colleague's work, Dr. Bruce Perry, who talks a lot about how to use the sensory system to regulate oneself, and a lot of patterned, repetitive, rhythmic movements, whether it's music or all kinds of things, are able to do that. And what you're sharing with us today, I think of it as another wonderful way to do it. Rana, it sounds like you were going to add something there.
I was just going to mention, so the research with the resilient youth started back in the late 1980s, and so we also have seen in the research decrease in anxiety, increase in self-esteem, increase in internal locus of control, so students are able to make more decisions on their own, and also as Laura meant, cooperation scores also increased in schools as well. So
wonderful.
Yeah, so I just want to mention about some of the students that I've seen who have had behavioral challenges, and they tend to be the students who are very aware and very intuitive, and it's really a gift. And I noticed this when I was teaching. They're more aware of the classroom. I remember taking down the Martin Luther King decorations, and some students would have no idea. And then these students would be more aware of what was kind of going on in the outside world. But with this awareness also came the need to learn, quite a few grounding techniques so they could actually be in their body. Mm-hmm. So it's both sides. You can see the real gift in it, kind of taking in what's going on in the environment as well as needing to also take care of yourself. So.
All right, we're running a little short on time. I have one more question that I wanted to ask, and then we'll sort of perhaps wrap things up here and talk about some resources for folks. But I can tell you one of the things we always worry about with our work is that people try to sort of sneak it in quickly and combine it with a bunch of other things. And so, you do a little collaborative problem solving, you do a little dialectical behavior therapy, you do a little motivational interviewing, and, I do all that stuff. And while on the one hand, I think wonderful that people are learning about it, I worry about the fidelity with which people are using these things. And I wonder if you have the same kinds of concerns, or if you would say, you know what, a little bit of relaxation practice, a little bit of mindfulness practice in the day is better than nothing, whether it's, how I would prescribe it or not. Do whatever you can do. I wonder how you think about that, if you could just touch upon that real quick.
Sure. I think, so the Resilient Schools program that we incorporated, Resilient Youth program, is based off of our SMART program for adults, and that's been research validated. So it's kind of a package, as you're saying, like it's, okay, do the relaxation response, write daily appreciations, so we research validated that. And then our Resilient Schools program is based off of that. But I also feel that if they can get something, I think that's important. And our research studies in the schools have showed that it is effective. So I feel like if it's too much to do it all, we initially would do a train the trainer model, because then the teachers could make it sustainable in the schools, and the teachers need the skills for themselves to help them self-regulate. Like, they're setting the tone, they're the music in the classroom, and then they have the skills to teach the students every year that they come along and follow the program. But we know, there's limitations of what people can do in the school. So, I think some is better than none, absolutely.
Great. All right, so obviously people can visit you all on the web, Benson-Henry Institute. Do you have any other resources you can quickly point people to? Any particular books you would recommend for readers, or apps or videos, if people want to learn more about your work or this work broadly?
Yeah, we have a lot of videos, you know, if you go on YouTube, and we've been creating new ones these days for people to see. So you can go on YouTube and type in Benson-Henry Institute and see some of the videos for relaxation that are there. But also I feel like apps are so user-friendly, and so maybe exploring on Insight Timer is a great one. Calm is a good one. Headspace is as well. So there's a lot out there for people to search.
I would just encourage you. I mean, this is also a fun time where, you know, you could take this opportunity to really create your own meditation with your child and record it on their iPhone. And whether it's something that they've written with you, or maybe it's a certain type of music that they like, that's a repetitive music. Or I actually had a group of kids I worked with at a school who, before they graduated, they want to record 3 of their friends laughing, because whenever they were going to be stressed, they were going to remind themselves the importance of laughter. So here's an opportunity to really reflect on, who is my child? What was it when they were little that relaxed them? You know, and who are they now? And really creating a relaxation technique that they can use not only academically, but for their life.
That's great. Thank you very much. And, you know, I'll tell you personally, like I said before, yoga has been a big part of my life. And even with that, I can tell you, I got an Apple Watch a while ago, and I didn't really know how to set it up, and it was constantly telling me to breathe, and I was constantly getting annoyed by it. And then one time I decided, instead of dismissing it, to try it. And it has this thing that just helps you breathe, and you do it for a minute, and my goodness, do you feel better immediately thereafter. So I'm a convert, and I'm reminded of what one of my yoga teachers said once. He said, you know, that there are many people, he said, like me, who seem pretty high strung at times. And when you suggest yoga, they'll say, oh, I'm too high strung for that. And he said, that's like saying I'm too dirty for a bath. And I think that's great advice. So I want to thank Laura and Rana from Benson-Henry Institute for joining us today. I'm sure this is going to be really helpful for folks who attended, and we'll see if we can find a way to make things available for people afterwards as well, so people could share it around also. And I appreciate you walking us through some things too, which was always great to have an experiential time here. So thank you for lending your time to support people during these challenging times. We really appreciate it, and I hope we'll see each other soon around our offices again, not too long from now.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Stuart, and thank kids.
You're very welcome. And just a quick plug for next time, we're going to have Jessica Minahan joining us, and we're going to be focused on schools in particular, and how to support our teachers, our parents who are new homeschoolers, and our students for remote learning. Jessica is a wonderful resource in that area, and I look forward to having her on with us next week at this time. Okay, take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye now.
Thank you. Bye.